part of our activity of the Digital Society Research Group, and our group brings together colleagues from a range of disciplines and departments in our faculty, whether it's health informatics, research on communication, research on design, research on arts, research in social sciences. All of us are united by our interest in how digital technologies shape the way we live, work, and create. And we do have a website, but it's currently in its final stages of preparation. So I'm not linking it just yet, but I did want to showcase the stuff that we're doing. We've got quite a lot of published authors, and the 3 latest ones are here, obviously, and absolutely delighted to be here. But we've got a lot more, and we also have very recently set up a working group called AI Literacy, where those of us whose work is touching on AI one way or another are working on create a range of literacies, whether it's information literacy, visual literacy, political literacy, in relation to AI and generative AI and its impact on our lives. So this is pretty much where we are as a group. And as I said, today we're welcoming 3 books by Geoff, Elisa, and myself. They're literally just hot off the press. They've been published in the last few months. And on this note, I'm going to stop and I'm going to hand it over to Geoff and his team to talk about his book titled Healthcare Knowledge and Library Introduction to Healthcare Knowledge and Library Services.
Yeah. Right. Lovely. Thank you, Addy. Although my name is first on this edited work, and I'll give David a chance to put our slides up. That slides up. This has very much been a collaboration with NHS England, and I really believe it demonstrates what we can achieve when practitioners, partners, and academics work together. But I'm not going to talk much about it. Just one thing about me: I'm reader in information and digital literacies in languages, information, and communications. And I'm going to hand over to David Stewart, who's the former head of NHS Library Knowledge Services for the North, and Sue Lacey Bryant, who was Chief Knowledge Officer for NHS England, and is now visiting professor here in knowledge mobilisation. And they're going to talk more about the book and how they see it. And just one last little thing. Colleague Francis Johnson in LIC was also involved in editing the book. So without further ado, I shall hand over to David, and then he'll hand over to Sue. Thank you, David.
Geoff, thank you very much. Can I just check? Can someone just nod that you can hear me? That's yes. Lovely. Thank you for nodding. Good afternoon to you all. Great pleasure to be here. Welcome to this very short presentation on our award-winning book, An Introduction to Healthcare Knowledge and Library Services, which was published, as you can see, by Facet last year. I'm David Stewart, as Geoff has said. I'm one of the editors and one of the authors. I'm formerly an NHS librarian. I've been retired for 4 years, but I remain active in the field. I'm going to kick this off and then, as we've said, hand over to my colleague Sue Lacey Bryant. Sue wrote the final chapter, which is a forward look at what knowledge and library services might be like in the future and what role library and knowledge specialists might play in the digital age. We're now going to test whether or not the next slide comes up. No, it didn't. Right.
You could try and hit on the cursor and then start scrolling up and down. It sometimes needs waking up.
Okay.
Or even exit the presentation mode and enter it again, if that helps.
There, excellent. Do you see that?
Yes.
We can
Thank
see
you.
it.
So
Thanks.
sorry, folks. Just a momentary blip here in Warrington. So just a word on Facet, the publisher. It's the publishing arm of CILIP. CILIP is the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals. It was founded by Royal Charter as long ago as 1898. So, you know, pushing on for 125 years old. It's the UK-wide professional body for library and knowledge professionals. It has members from public libraries, academic, business, charity sectors, and way beyond all of that. And there's a link there to the CILIP website if anyone wants to have a look. And I'm not getting the next slide again. Apologies. There we go. So that's just a very quick look at the chapters. Just to say it's a multi-author, multi-chapter book drawing on expertise of practicing library and knowledge specialists, many working in NHS England. You can see the range of subjects. I won't go through it all, but ranging from strategic planning, the needs of the specialist workforce, quality assurance, and patient information, health literacy, and even misinformation, interesting topics currently. I want to say, we all want to say thank you to our 20 plus authors and edited, as well as many other people who contributed case studies. Editors here are marked with an asterisk, and I've highlighted Geoff Walton because he was very much our lead editor and he led us through this whole process of getting this published. Good news is that we're selling well. We've already won a prize for the book, the CILIP Knowledge and Information Group Prize for the Best Print Resource of 2024. There's already a whisper of a second edition, and thank you. I'll hand now to Sue Lacey Bryant.
Thanks very much, everyone. So look, you've seen the vast range of material that we've covered in the book itself, but we're going to focus on this final chapter, and that has a mix of content. So some general population data type content, which I think is of relevance to anyone who is interested in what a digital society is going to be like, and then some general points, actually very specific points about how I envisage the future of knowledge and library services. So we're going to give you some highlights of that over the next 10-15 minutes. Thank you very much. It is, of course, a privilege to be able to speak to you this afternoon. It was a privilege to be part of the work. Much of that work was led, as you've heard, with this great editorial team, but also many of those authors were highly experienced expert practitioners, and many of whom remain in the team within NHS England. Knowledge and library specialists in healthcare, are a really skilled part of the health services team. We talk about doctors and nurses. Actually, there are 350 professions involved in delivering healthcare in the UK. And what knowledge and library specialists do, really particularly, is perhaps two things. One is bring evidence to the bedside and the board, to decision making where that's going to happen, but also they offer the valuable gift of time to colleagues, never more of an issue than now where the health services are under such population. But this book is written for everyone. We've written it with a global perspective. So worth bearing in mind as we think about digital societies here and everywhere else, that every country in the world is experiencing growth in both the number and the proportion of older people. I think you need to be on the next slide, David, when you can. By 2030, 1 in 6 people, 1 in 6 will be age 60 or over. That's an estimated 1.4 billion people worldwide. David, are you struggling?
Yeah, sorry. I'm pressing the button and nothing's happening.
Okay. Do you want me to put my version on?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Okay. If you stop sharing, David.
I have done. Apologies, folks.
Slideshow from current slide. Now I've just got to share in here. Okay, colleagues. So, yeah, 1 in 6 people are going to be aged over 60 or over. That's by 2030. That's very close now. 1.4 billion people worldwide. Meanwhile, heat waves, storms, floods, droughts, and air pollution are affecting the environment in which we all work. They're affecting and live. Clean air, safe drinking water, sanitation, sufficient food, and secure shelter are major challenges, and they make it easier for disease to spread across large groups of people and in time across continents. As people are living longer with more long-term conditions, there's an inexorable increase in the demand for healthcare. So continuing pressure on health services to reduce costs and maintain quality, that will be important as you think about digital applications in a moment. The healthcare professionals are aging and retiring, and there is a global shortage of skilled staff. And that presents considerable challenges to health systems right across the world. So managing and applying knowledge in a digital age has to be part of the solution as health services seek to address these challenges. So there is yet, in terms of knowledge management and knowledge mobilization, this conundrum, this 60-30-10 challenge, that, well, we've had all sorts of change. Actually, improvement in healthcare has flatlined. And this has persisted for three decades, 30 years or so. 60% of healthcare on average is in line with the evidence or consensus. 30% is some form of waste, really low value, not worth doing, and 10% is actively harmful. So you've got major challenges to which knowledge specialists and digital solutions, can absolutely be part of the answer, ensuring practices more evidence-based, improving safety, improving productivity in light of those workforce challenges to release clinical time. There's an information explosion. You can come back and look at this. This is hugely, hugely significant in scientific literature, but very significant in the medical field. The estimate some years ago was that medical knowledge would by now be doubling every 73 days. Actually, I heard a projection last year at the American Board of Artificial Intelligence in medicine that that's now every 60 days. Think on. So doctors are already experiencing a high level, and other healthcare professionals, it's particularly been studied in doctors, a higher background level of anxiety at work around this information explosion. And so part of the mission of knowledge services, part of our mission as people writing this book, is to help knowledge and library specialists and those who commission them and those who use them really think about the role of these services, because we need to do what we can to mitigate the information stress felt by healthcare staff. So look, we start to come to the crux of some of the issues that you have, interests that you have. This is a quotation from Eric Topol, who's an American cardiologist, is a digital guru in his own right, and who we brought in to England to produce an independent report. And what he tells us is that we're at a unique juncture in the history of medicine. You've got this convergence of genomics, biosensors, the electronic patient record, all this stuff coming in, all superimposed on a digital infrastructure, the quality of which you may wish to comment on, and the reliability, how robust is that? And now we've got all the excitement about AI. Which of course has the potential and the computing power to make sense of the overwhelming amount of data created. So, we are on the verge of being able to do some very amazing things if we can get ourselves sorted out, I guess. So, you know, that technological innovation is moving at pace. We're already changing the nature of service delivery. Our government has just announced, in England, has just announced ambitious plans to make the UK a world leader in AI in the public sector. And so these specialists, knowledge and library specialists, are today, as they will be tomorrow, the human bridge between knowledge services and knowledge users. And it's definitely time for our services to start revisiting priorities and exploring these opportunities. These 4 areas are broad categories were developed by McKinsey Global Institute, and they actually identified 56 foundational skills. For the healthcare library teams, this points areas to which they're going to be delivering content, feeding information into the 1.4 million people in the National Health Service. That's just in England. So, you know, multiply that around the world to all the services. So a massive amount of upskilling in these areas for the whole of the healthcare workforce across the world. But also, of course, it speaks to the kind of continuing professional development that we need to take forward in our own area. The future of the workforce in healthcare, you know, again, these points are really significant. Non-clinical roles are going to become ever more important, crucial to support the patient. Providers are surely going to prioritise reducing the administrative overhead. And it's my belief that the sheer scale of the workforce shortage will drive investment in attracting and retaining talent and adopting technological solutions. It's part of the motivation for large organisations to adopt these things at speed. So everyone in the labour market is going to know how they're adding value. They're going to have to be increasingly digital savvy and very flexible in their approach to work and adapting to new ways of working and seeing new occupations in their career. Not unusual. I had, you know, extensive change in working patterns through my own career. It's not an unusual thing. So priorities for healthcare services, the book, and you can look into this, identifies this around these 7 areas. I'm going to speak very briefly about these. So embedded roles, and the key point here really is about there's an increasing demand for what I'd call decision-ready information in many sectors, and there's really good evidence that clinical librarians closely aligned to a team of clinicians provide a very valuable service with a positive impact on patient care, saving time, money, improving quality and safety. Knowledge management, I think is the next, you know, I think this is the next frontier, actually. Knowledge and information are the currency of successful organisations, and our library roles and our knowledge specialist roles are gradually becoming more and more focused on how to be using technology to really mine knowledge, apply organisational knowledge, capture it, share it. Equally, of course, those human skills of facilitating knowledge exchange, putting people in touch with each other, facilitation techniques, I think will also have a larger role to play. And information literacy, of course, well, you know, don't only have to turn to any piece of social media or newspaper or indeed stand in a queue in your local pharmacy to see just how important and hear just how important information literacy is, to be able to think critically and make balanced judgments about the information we find and use. So I think another role for health librarians is going to be to work with other information providers, whether that's people on the front line in healthcare or people in voluntary organisations, all sorts of places, to give people the confidence and skills to work with our citizens, our residents, around the dangers of fake news and helping people move forward so that they can use trusted sources of information. I was privileged to do the work I referred to earlier, the Topol Review, which is this report here. And I do believe, and there is evidence that AI, for example, is already bringing phenomenal changes in healthcare. And so knowledge specialists need to be playing a significant role in raising awareness of the models, the tools, the techniques, sharing the evidence base of implementation, really supporting the evaluation of digital products. And that includes knowledge solutions, which are rapidly taking up AI and machine learning, particularly. We can't go about doing procurement of the new and shiny. This stuff has got to be tested, secure, and safe for patients. So there's a bigger concept around nurturing learning health systems to which the flow of data is critical, to which our digital solutions and interoperability on robust technology platforms are all going to be very, very central. So again, this is an important concept for anyone looking at healthcare. In a learning system, internal data, staff know-how, evidence from research are systematically integrated, and actually bringing in organizational memory, and then that knowledge is put into practice. Now, there are people trying to do that at small system scale, people trying to do it across larger health systems and patient services. I do think it's the way to go. I think it's extraordinarily challenging, and digital AI, machine learning, data flows, really high quality information flow is going to be important. I talked earlier about fake information and so on, so health literacy really important, as I've mentioned before. The dangers around digital, patient safety, patient privacy, the rise of fraud, the damage, the sheer damage that misinformation and disinformation can do in healthcare is, there are stories that would break your heart. So CILIP, who David has already mentioned, took on the CILIP technology review and looked at where we would see AI and machine learning being used. The report was done in 2021. It really bears a look, and it's described in the book. And you can see these key areas around users, their behaviors, the skills they need, the ways in which services will interact with them, knowledge, the knowledge base itself, what mobile search is going to do, how you're integrating these tools into speeding up, accelerating systematic review, while really being needing to be extremely careful that the adoption of these technologies is transparent and leaves human reviewers, expert reviewers in control. And then in services themselves by really automating routine processes. So very much needs to be done there. AI-powered knowledge services in healthcare look around like some of these things. So decision support, which is about knowledge translation, getting information to somebody at 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, so that they can make the best confident decision as they deal with a patient. That's already in place, and those services like BMJ Best Practice, which Health Education England, now NHS England buys, are already exploring these, adopting these technologies. That broader piece of discovery, AI, machine learning, NLP, are all in there. So, if these are your things, you take a look at the chapter. I think, the core skills that knowledge specialists bring are going to be really important, and they will be part and should be part of reimagining knowledge products to help teams manage the piece and up to date. What does it all mean for jobs? Well, Eric Topol's view is that some jobs will go, but on balance, there will be more jobs than different jobs. And, the CILIP review pretty much reflected the same thing. AI and robots are going to create change and destroy jobs across the whole piece. And that new roles will be coming in. Building on the strengths of the profession are really important. The book discusses that at some length. Focuses on the kind of competencies that our discipline of knowledge librarians, knowledge managers will need to focus. And there's that piece around a deeper understanding of data science, computational thinking, fusion skills, bringing these skills together. Really important for helping people find their way forward, and then training in the literacies, of course. Some of that stuff around fusion skills is going to be about using technology to give people more headroom so that they've got time to think. It's going to be important. The book refers to the CILIP professional knowledge and skills base on the basis of the review that we commissioned from CILIP, which I just flagged. It was led by Andrew Cox from Sheffield. On the basis of that, we actually updated the whole of this professional knowledge skill base, partly upping the content on knowledge management, but also, data management very particularly, as well as the technology section. So really important. So, prediction about the future is very difficult. I had a go in the chapter. I see a bright future for healthcare knowledge specialists and services, but I don't believe it's predetermined. I think the actions that we all take in our disciplines now, as we respond to the advance of new technology, new in inverted commas, takes us back to old wisdom, really. And Seneca the Younger reminds us that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So whatever the scenarios are that unfold for knowledge and library specialists, and for any of us on this call, actually the time to get on top of this stuff now and to prepare and to keep moving with it right across the globe is absolutely now. And I hope we individually, but perhaps more than that, we as a society, we as humans, we really need to be lucky, and we need to prepare. Geoff, do you want to round that out?
Yeah. So thank you, Sue. So as you can see, everyone, it really is a snapshot of how the information professionals can assist in taking forward knowledge management for healthcare professionals, finding the evidence, creating the evidence, and with it looking to the future, what we really need to think about is how we ensure that the systems are quality systems, and that we think that's a real job for us. To be critical, how these things are applied, and be critical about that application, especially generative AI, especially AI that might be used to find specialist evidence for treatments, obviously, which are life and death situations. So I think it's an important work. So thank you, Sue, and thank you, David, and I'll hand back to Addy.
Thanks so much to the three of you. This is absolutely eye-opening, especially for those of us who are outside of the health research and health informatics, and incredibly useful. And again, congratulations on your book. I hope everyone here in the room will get a chance to order it, get it, and read it. And we're now moving on to Elisa to talk about her book, doing an absolute, very radical change of direction to a very different topic, to talk about visual digital cultures and drones. Elisa,
Exactly.
over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
If I knew I was going after an award-winning book, I would have said no. But anyway, so I'm gonna share my screen now. Is it visible to everyone?
Yeah, just need full screen, but we can see your yeah, perfect.
Lovely.
Okay. Thanks everyone for this opportunity. This is the first time that I talk about my book in front of an audience, so I'm a little bit anxious and excited at the same time. So before starting my my presentation, I would like to say thank you to a couple of people, really. One is Dr. Lauren O'Hagan, who is now research fellow at the Open University, who contributed to the field work that made the publication of this book and other academic papers, thanks to her help with the field work. And Richard Carter, a senior lecturer from the University of York, who we collaborated together to the publication of another edited collection, who is my respondent here today. Hi, Richard. So just to give you a kind of briefly introduction to the book, as a researcher and a person, I've always been passionate about photography and visual culture from my early studies. And with the development of certain technologies, I felt that there was a lot more to think about and explore in relation to the combination new technologies and visual culture. And I explained this in the preface of my book, where I bring as example the use of drones in the BBC documentary Frozen Planet 2. If you haven't done it, I recommend you to watch it because, by the way, it's brilliant and it makes us really reflect on the future of our planet. So essentially, the BBC crew used extensively drone technology to film, amongst other things, the development of an avalanche. And this is the example that I bring in the preface. So thanks to the technical capabilities of this flying robot, they capture the descent of the avalanche and the fastest and furious development in a way that with other cameraman photographic devices would have been possible to share in a documentary. So the core idea of my book is really reflecting on how emerging visual technologies contribute to shape the ways we see the world and our visual culture. So essentially, drones are fundamentally reshaping, this is the main idea, our visual culture and perception of the world by offering novel top-down visual perspectives that challenge traditional ways of seeing. Through their integration into various fields, ranging from visual filmmaking, photography, surveillance, mapping, and environmental conservation, drones are producing new visual language that significantly alters how we interpret and engage with visual media more broadly. Drone visuals offer more than technical novelty. They create a cultural shift in visual literacy, aesthetics, and ethics by representing perspectives that were previously inaccessible to human vision, at least to the scale that we experience today. So by enabling humans to experience the world from previously unseen angles, and an example is the bird's eye view, drone mediate human nature interactions, bringing into focus the implications in this way, in new way of seeing for society, privacy, ethics, but also creativity. So ultimately, drone visuals contribute to a broader transformation in how we, in visual culture, we produce content, we circulate content, and we consume content, presenting both opportunities, for example, to enhance storytelling or artistic creativity, but also challenges that are referred mainly to privacy concerns, surveillance issues, and ethical dilemma. So from this perspective, the drones are not just tools, but cultural artifacts that reconfigure the boundaries of our visual media. So the widespread use of drone in society has the potential to change, this is what I believe it does, the way people see the world in the same way that other technologies have, like smartphone and the internet, done in the past. So in many ways, drones are doing to aerial photography what smartphones did to photo cameras. Drones are the latest technological advancement to have the potential to a revolutionary impact on our visual culture. Also, funding from a previous pilot study that I conducted on drone users and develop at the beginning of my fellowship of this project suggested me that these aerial perspectives that drones can afford are significantly expanding human vision as they make accessible new visual aesthetics. So here I'm sharing with you the kind of structure of my book, and I kind of emphasize on chapter 4 and 6, where I discuss in depth my empirical empirical work. So the research behind this book was funded by an AHRC Leadership Fellowship. And in terms of its theoretical framework, the project brought together three main perspectives: the aesthetic and semiotic qualities of drone visuals, so interrogating how drone-generated imageries can disrupt our traditional visual conventions; sociocultural impact of drone visuals. So I basically question where these visuals circulate and the how we perceive them, how we exchange them, and the ethical concerns that they might raise. And I have as a third perspective the audience perspective on the visuals that they consume. So in that case, I engage with people's perspectives and way they interpret these new visual forms. Going more into details into the chapter 4. Chapter 4 is titled Semiotics of Drone Visuals, Views from the Blue, and I take the title from a drone visual exhibition that I organized as part of my fellowship, as a part of a kind of a public engagement event. So basically during that for that exhibition, I selected a range of 11 examples from my fieldwork, because the intention was to analyze more in depth the main characteristics that these new visual technologies can bring, and share these visuals with members of the public in order to kind of inform as well members of the public about the opportunities and the visual differences that this flying technologies can bring. And these in 11 examples range from 360-degree vision, access to inaccessible places, defamiliarizing the familiar, verticality, shadow play, dronist, power of weather, but also classic landscape. So through this unique vantage point, the idea of this exhibition was to foster, you know, how to share with members of the public how this novel interaction between human, nature, and technology takes place. Then most of my other empirical work is discussed in chapter 6, where I really investigate the public perceptions of drones as technologies, but also the visual that they create. And I explored this through a range of methodologies. So I analyzed the online forums, I collected impressions from people who attended the exhibition, and online surveys as well. So this chapter basically reveals a mixture of perspective on either the technology and the images that they generate. So basically, in a nutshell, we can see how drones live this kind of duality, this dichotomy, where on the one hand we can see and experience drones and drone visuals as a transformative way of reinterpreting our world visual culture, but also we can reflect on the ethical challenges that they can bring. So now I want to kind of play a little game, because I don't want to talk about the book and the content. I want to know what you think about the visuals that I have collected. So I'm sharing, like, on purpose, this image, which is part of my fieldwork, without title and without the name of the author, because I want you to reflect a little bit and try to understand what it is and what you think about it. If there is anyone who can say something.
Is that the dinosaur park?
Yeah, almost. So The examples that I'm sharing now basically are examples taken from the drone visual exhibitions, and each example basically is the representative of a theme that I explored with the field work. So in this case, we have an example of a shadow play. So this specific image is captured by Eric, an amateur American drone pilot in his 50s, and was captured in a vast Borrego Palm Canyon desert in the USA. So in this case, from a 300 degrees lens, we can see that drone can capture expansive panoramic views, presenting unique vistas of landscape. And from a more kind of semiotic perspective, we can see here how the traditional rule of thirds is completely disruptive. The rule of thirds, for people who are not really familiar with the visual communication, is the fact that to be visually pleasant, usually an image has two parts of sky and one part of the horizon, the soil, if you like, of the landscape. So in this case, the ground covers approximately 90% of the frame, producing a spherical illusion as if the desert road might fall off of the earth edge. This deviant from the rule of thirds manipulates the scale and our understanding of the space. And what is really like innovative about this image is that it gives us this kind of a misinterpretation of the space and the object because of this top-down view that we have on the sculptures and therefore on the shadows. This is my favorite image of the collection, and I used in other publications as example of another theme that I'm going to discuss now. Can anyone guess what that is? No? Okay. So this image is part of the category defamiliarizing the familiar, and is used here as example to show how drones have the unique capability to transform the natural landscape into captivating abstract art, presenting familiar terrains in entirely new and abstract artistic perspectives. So captured from a unique top-down vantage point, Maxim, a Russian pilot in his mid-30s, photographs here 4 salt evaporation ponds in Russia. So this unique perspective transforms these ponds into a vast marbled masterpiece reminiscent of the intricate end paper of 19th century leather bound books. The pond's rectangular configuration paired with their arresting color combination also evoke stained glass windows. So this aerial view further challenges our spatial comprehension, and especially, again, the absence of the horizon disrupts our orientation and makes us wonder what is in this what this image is representing. This is the final image that I'm gonna show you, and I use this image as a poster for the drone visual exhibition because I think after the one that I showed before is my favorite. Anyone guessing what that is? Okay, so it takes a while to figure out what this image is, and this is the reason why I like it so much. So from the fieldwork, for example, some participant said there was an eye, other that was a virus, and other participant thought there was a tree, so from the bottom. So it's very important here to see how certain images, certain drone perspectives can challenge our brain. And this is one of the images that really made me ask the question, are drones kind of creating a new visual culture specifically because of this ability to create images that we, at first sight, we don't really understand? So I opened this question to other scholars and practitioners in 2022, and I organized a conference in Sheffield for that, bringing together an interdisciplinary group to explore the evolving role of drones and their impact in society. And this event provided a valuable opportunity for us to collaborate together, including Richard, on the publication of an edited collection titled Drones in Society and New Visual Aesthetics. So now I pause with the presentation because I want to kind of bring Richard into the conversation. So Richard is, as I said earlier, senior lecturer in digital culture and is also a visual artist, and is conducting a groundbreaking research that bridges together digital technologies and nature, and often expressed through the creation of poetry. So his innovative approach beautifully emphasizes the interplay between technologies and the natural world. And I thought, who better than Richard can highlight the significance of new visual technology in representing and reshaping the way we understand society and nature.
Thank you very much, Elisa, for a very generous introduction there. So yes, I mean, it was a really fascinating read, your book, actually. It certainly gives me a lot of food for thought in terms of framing, indeed, my own practice and how I understand certainly what I'm trying to do with my own particular experiments. And I mean, one of the things I really like about your work is not just the fact that it is obviously very insightful, but actually has such a really clear methodology, a very clear process by which it gathers data about this particular phenomenon, this very complex phenomenon of drone visualities and its impacts. And I actually use it as part of my teaching for my students when I'm talking to them about drone visualities, because it's a really good, clear structure to begin to think through this very complex topic. And I think one of the characteristics of your book is that it has this really interesting mixed methods approach. We've got sort of online observations, we've got qualitative interviews, there's a sort of a qualitative content analysis, and also this really interesting concept of sort of photo elicitation as well. And I guess I was wanting to, get a sense as to how this method helped you tease out these sort of social and cultural impacts of drone technologies, why you adopted the approach that you did.
Thank you, Richard. So yeah, precisely. So another key part of of this book in particular, but in relation to my broader research on new visual technologies, is the fact that I think, of course, following the footstep of other scholars like Sarah Pink or Joanna Zielinska, the fact that to really understand visual culture in the digital age, we really need to combine together the semiotic and aesthetic understanding of the images themselves. And that's why I spent a lot of time analyzing the composition, the meaning behind these visuals that you can guys see in these slides, but also the way these images were made through the use of technology, and also the way in this case drone pilots used the technology to reach certain aesthetic outputs and messages. So overall, my methodology was formed by a qualitative approach that combined together the collection of people's perspectives. So we're talking about interviews, we're talking about surveys to investigate what people thought about drone technologies and drone visuals. But also I observe participant practices, and I observe the way they're using the images to communicate these new visual narratives that they wanted to share. So really, for me, a key part of this study for also future practices is really understand that to know more about our visual culture and visual understanding, we need to combine together the understanding of the visual products, but also the visual practices that lead to a certain visual narrative.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Just one more question, conscious of time. I mean, certainly reading through your book, I mean, the basic premise is that drones are opening up new visualities, and you opened up with a nice anecdote about the BBC wildlife filming. And certainly I remember the original 2006 Planet Earth series, in which they used a contraption called the Cinebule, which was basically a balloon with a power fan strapped to it to try to get these orbiting shots of a baobab tree. And they crashed into it, and they got into all sorts of tangles, and you wouldn't even think about using a technology like that today. You would use a drone to achieve those shots, and in the case of Frozen Planet, they used a first-person racing drone to race along with the avalanche, and I thought that was fantastic. So evidently, new perspectives, new technologically framed perspectives to enable new outlooks and new patterns on the planet and the Earth more broadly. And that these are not just tools, these are agents shaping how we see and understand the world at the most powerful. And now, of course, we're seeing visual technologies coupled with AI technologies, that word again, and having sort of all sorts of intricate impacts going forward in terms of how we manage, understand, measure, and perceive the world. And I guess one of the things I thought was, to kind of round off what you effectively the lessons that you have learned from writing this book in terms of what you think in terms of the future is going to be in terms of drone visualities, about how the technology is evolving, what opportunities it's giving us, and how ultimately can we manage that integration in a way that is ultimately respectful and ethical and thoughtful as well, how you see the future of drone visualities evolving and maybe the direction we'd like to take it in.
Oh my God, this is an important question, Richard. So just to basically to give you an evidence of how to answer this question. So I move from these 4 amazing images to this one, which is, I mean, nothing wrong with Alessio's picture, but another important findings on my fieldwork was the fact that most amateur drone pilot shared their experience in learning from the use of technology, learning how to use the technology, but also learning new ways of seeing our surroundings. So this is an example of classic landscape, and most of the practitioners that I interviewed and I examined, they start from simple shots, and then slowly they become familiar with technology, with the possibility of these new perspectives to go back to these results. And this shows the ability that the amateurs have in developing with the technology a new visual literacy. So just to conclude my presentation, so thank you for that question, because it really helps me to finalize my presentation. So this book doesn't have a proper ending. What has is is opening a conversation about how the development of new visual technologies can help us to generate a new visual literacies that can be used, for example, in humanities research. As we always talk about mapping, engineering work, surveillance, but we're not talking about the use of technology in arts and humanities work. Another sensitive topic that you touched upon was how are we able to integrate new technologies ethically, and especially with the use of AI and everything. So another open debate that I have in my book, and of course is that and is my room for development, is reflecting on the use of drones beyond line of sight, because this is something that is in development at the moment in relation to drone legislation. AI, as we saw with the previous presentation, is not going to go, is going to stay, and is going to be embedded in most of our flying robots. And we should considered this as an opportunity for the future, an opportunity for enriching our visual and understanding of the world, enriching our everyday practices, and enriching our visual culture. So the direction is definitely working on ethical and responsible integration of new technologies in our practices. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, both. That was absolutely fascinating. And again, it's such a pleasure to see such different work, but also very rich and very exciting. So we're moving now to the final round, which is my own book. And I'm really delighted to have two respondents, Lucy Solid from Future Everything and the project at Nature on the Board, and Julian Tate from Open Data Manchester. So I will talk really, really briefly because I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to really briefly present the book. Here we go. Let me just launch the slides. So the book that I will be talking about today is a co-authored one with my long-term co-conspirator and co-collaborator, Liu Xin, who is based in Karlstad University in Sweden and also currently a research fellow at Turku Institute for Advanced Studies in Finland. And it's called Digital Technologies, Smart Cities and the Environment. And very, very briefly, what we do in the book, we depart from this kind of broad and very popular discourse that is globalized, that digital technologies are environmentally helpful and will help the environment, will save the environment. This is something that's really central to literature on sustainability more broadly. And also coming from my previous extensive research on digital sustainability, when you look into sustainability studies, you might notice that sustainability and the digital are kind of used interchangeably. One is standing for the other. And smart cities is basically just one case study, one extension of that broader focus on digital technologies as environmentally helpful, useful for a range of reasons, which I don't have time to necessarily outline. So smart cities as a result, smart cities are based on smart technologies, digital technologies that are networked, connected, sharing data, sharing devices, and they assume to be environmentally good. So the question that I've been asking in my work before I teamed up with Liu Xin to work on this book is digital always sustainable? And as I've written previously on a number of occasions, it isn't always necessarily. And it's not just that digital is wrong. I'm not saying digital is wrong. Digital technologies and the range of them has been immensely helpful to both document environmental phenomena, raise awareness of climate change. However, what is being ignored and silenced and invisibilized, and that again is not unique to smart cities at all, it's a broader phenomena within conversations about digital tech, is the environmental harms of digital technologies. And by those, I mean things like mining that is needed and extractivism that's needed to create every single device like a phone or any other, or every single sensor that will require incredible and very rapidly growing use of energy by various networks, not to mention training of AI, and also e-waste at the end of very short lives of those digital devices. So this stuff is always present, but is often invisibilized and silenced. And what we did in the book is we looked at two case studies. One was Helsinki and the other one was Manchester. And we looked at smart cities as just one example of this broader relationship between digital technologies and the environment, things that are being put forward, hopes that are being invested in the idea of smart city versus the harms that are being ignored or invisibilized. And although the book is highly theoretical and also kind of ethnographically poetic, it is central to our broader intervention and research and policy, and kind of start thinking, how do we think about smart cities differently? So what I did, I'll only just focus on my half, which was about Manchester. I looked at several smart city projects which took place in the last less than a decade, and they were both finished by the time I started writing. So one was City Verve, the other one was Triangulum. They both got a lot of funding. City Verve got around 10 million funding from the government, and it was a consortium of industry partners and universities. And the idea was to focus on the Internet of Things and their role in cities. Triangulum is a research project funded by Horizon Research Funding, and it's a team of 22 partners across 6 European cities, of which Manchester was one. to see again how smart cities can be, how smart technologies can be integrated in cities. And I'm just showing you just a really brief snippet, just to give you one example of many. So the two green images on your right-hand side is part of the kind of celebratory wrap-up of the Triangulum project on the project Twitter account, showing things that have been achieved. So devices that have been installed, smart lights that were installed on bikes, and a range of projects that were trialed and experimented with during those projects to see how smart technologies can be implemented and what good can they do. And I was particularly interested in environmental, obviously, focus. So, and interestingly here, for those of you who come from visual studies, the colors, the green color signifies straight away that there is some environmental benefits. So I won't have enough time to talk about the details of all the experiments and ideas that I've documented, but what I looked at the kind of how they were presented as something exciting, but also what kind of promises were made. And the promises were always of expanding from a small experiment, a small project into something long and sustainable that will last. But I will also discover that as soon as the project ends, stuff disappears, both physical things and the data, and don't necessarily last. So there is a kind of broader conversation to be have about this promise of legacy that doesn't necessarily materialize. But what I was also really fascinated by is this question of what remains. And so if you're interested enough to read the book and actually get to reading the book, both Lucian and I talk and looking and reflecting on the two cities. We'll look at what remains after smart city projects are finished. And we're looking at two types of ruins: digital ruins, which is data that is broken or inaccessible or no longer used, or digital presence that's breaking down, or ghostly and missing websites. That was something really interesting when I was trying to get information about the two projects that have just finished when I started writing the book. And because the project finished, the website were no longer there. So all the media coverage, all the social media materials that I saw that linked to the projects basically brought me to an error message. So here are two out of several. And I'm looking at them as kind of ghostly traces of things that were there and no longer. So this is just one example of many of digital remains. And what does that mean for the sustainable future of the cities, but also material ruins? And whether this is things like a smart bike. So those of you who are based in Manchester may remember the Mobikes, which was the first piloting scheme of bikes that were connected to apps. So you have to have had a phone with an app to unlock the bike and to pay for the bike and to move around the city, and then unlock it and then put it back when you're done. Within a year, many of them ended up on the canal. Even though they were supposed to have been unhackable, they've been hacked, they've been destroyed. There is a broader conversation there to be had about social justice and whether vandalism is a form of resistance, but I'll leave that for later. But those bikes themselves, pieces of them are rotting on the ground and in the water. But also material ruins include waste and e-waste that was left after those projects that are all focusing on the new and the real time and the future oriented, but these things stay behind. So what we end the book is this question of ruins and ruination, which invite us to think, rather than thinking about innovation, and invites us to think about repair and care and their role in environmental futures. So what I'm ending the book with, and I want to end my really brief presentation with, is this invitation to flip the conversation from starting with the tech and the innovation and asking what tech can do to start with the environment. So how and where do we look for signs of the environment in the narrative of smart cities, which is what I've done. I've been trying to see of where does the environment show up and when does it disappear. And then my question is, then what would happen if instead of we look at the genealogy of scientific pioneering, which was so central to especially Manchester narrative of smart cities, Manchester is the cradle of industrial revolution and so on. So what will happen if instead of this genealogy and then instead of genealogy of technological solutionism, we start with questions of the environment and start with questions of nature, and we put nature and the environment and land and water and air as our starting point? How would our conversation about urban living and about technology will look like? And I will stop here. How do I stop sharing? Here we go. And I will pass it on to my wonderful two respondents. I don't know who of you would like to go first, but I'm absolutely eager to hear what you have to say because I'm so inspired by both of your work on data as something that's being open and has to be there for the citizens in Julian's case, and on the centering nature in conversations about the future in Lucy's case. So maybe Lucy, you look like you're waving and willing to go first. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, maybe I'll just introduce Future Everything. I'm the creative director of Future Everything, and Future Everything's Manchester-based organisation, kind of creative think tank and art programmer working across, thinking critically and creatively about the implications of technologies for society. So yeah, thanks, Addy, for inviting me to be a respondent, and also for your excellent work in this book, which likewise is really inspiring and generative. I really like that idea of what remains and thinking about repair and care. So yeah, just briefly then, Addy asked me to respond from kind of the perspective of Future Everything's work and bringing nature onto the board. So by bringing, we're kind of in this process now, of which Addy is a part. She's part of our working group, which we're really happy to have Addy as part of it. And yeah, we're basically, our aim with this initiative is to kind of contribute to wider systems change required to address the ecological emergency. So bringing nature onto the board of Future Everything is really about foregrounding nature, or the more than human, basically, across everything we do. So with this, we're kind of not only trying to pioneer the nature on the board model and contribute to that field of work, but also the idea is, for us, through our programming, is to kind of contribute in our own small way to trying to shift the compass of technological development away from kind of what I see as kind of abstractive and extractive frameworks, and towards more eco-social values. And yeah, Addy, with your book and this notion of environmental saviours, like one of the things that I really connect to around it is also been thinking about a similar approach that's emerging in relation to tackling kind of climate change and biodiversity extinction, and kind of mobilizing technologies in that. And I think this idea of environmental saviors that you're referencing kind of connects to that as well. These like technology as being some kind of environmental savior, whether that's AI, that's going to kind of solve climate change for us, or it's the use of AI to decode whale song, for example, the SETI project that's ongoing at the moment, which is harvesting data from sperm whales in order to decode them into human language. Or you've got the Max Planck Institute's Internet of Animals program, and various other kind of smart forest projects, which I know Jennifer Gabris, who you reference in your book, is doing brilliant work around as well. So yeah, they all seem to me to share this kind of commonality, really, of activities which are kind of sharing those traits of the smart city and those techno-solutionist narratives, these kind of quite extractive logics, and this kind of inherent anthropocentric kind of approach that underpins them. Also, this desire to render the kind of natural world transparent and kind of knowable, and with that, in theory, it's something we can master. So one of the key questions I'm asking as part of developing our work, at Future is, what if technological development, was more framed in these eco-social terms, and we saw technology as a tool to serve that, rather than as an end in itself, or this kind of means for kind of profit or regulation? And going a step further, even, what if technology really honoured and served the sacred relationships between all beings? And so, I don't think there are any easy answers for what those kind of technologies might look like, but I think we can look back as well as ahead around when we're thinking about this. And there are various artists who, inspire me with their work in this area, and that's people like Suzanne Kite and Chinupa Hangska-Luger, Patricia Dominguez, Anneke Yee, and others. And I started just to think about, in response to this, like, what would be some kind of broad principles, maybe a little utopian, but I still think worth thinking about, that a nature kind of directed approach might inform with how we kind of develop technologies. And I'm thinking about things like humility, listening and attuning, relationality and embodiment. What about questions of kind of mutualism, circularity, accountability, the local and decentralized, working within limitations as opposed to kind of an endless virtual space of the internet and whatever else, honoring kind of unknowability and adaptability and kind of messiness. And at Future Everything, through our kind of program, I see us as kind of enabling artists and others to really start to kind of create and explore alternative stories around technological development and also prototype eco-social technologies. And so just to wrap up with an example of what I mean by that, our Compass server prototype that is something we're going to be working on. So basically the idea is to create a prototype to power the Future Everything website using compost. So we'll be creating a bio battery, and that compost is going to be located at a permaculture growing site in Manchester. And for me, this project is all about kind of materializing technology, acknowledging its entanglements with the human and more than human world, and thinking in terms of limitations, thinking in terms of the local, thinking, I think, like connecting with those logics of care and collaboration, and yeah, just very much kind of grounding, I think, the technology back in the earth where, ultimately it still is being made and comes from. So I think this also connects to your points, Addy, about, e-waste and carbon footprint, and how can we kind of, think differently so that we're not adding to those ruins. So yeah, that's one project that we're working on with University of the Arts London and their critical climate computing initiative. Yeah, hopefully that gives some little taste of, what could technologies look like with nature on the board. That's our first foray, and I'm sure when we actually have nature up and running on our board, there'll be plenty more. But yeah, I'm really excited about the direction you're going in, Addy, with your research. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucy. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate this, and kind of how much I appreciate this shift in conversation about digital tech and our futures happening more broadly. So when you told me about nature on the board and Future Everything, I was really delighted because, I've seen Future Everything as kind of mostly driving digital tech and assuming that the future is going to be digital. So changing and opening up this conversation is immensely useful. And we're now turning to Julian. So over to you.
Hi, thanks, Addy. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, following on from Lucy's comments, I really found that your kind of journey through this book really, really fascinating, and something that hit very much upon some of the themes that we've been exploring with regards to environmental sustainability, especially with this kind of perpetual onslaught of the technological hammer, so to speak. And I think what I like what you start to talk about is that kind of the certain pretense to sustainability that happens within techno solutionism, as you suggested, taken from the idea of commodity fetishism. This idea that the reframing of the problem to one that can be solved by technology and technology alone, even to the extent where technology becomes the mediator between how you experience the surroundings that you're in and what the green could be in a very kind of formalized type way. I mean, one of the things I would like to ask you is where you see this push coming from. We've seen within, especially with the projects within Helsinki and within Manchester, they draw upon this notion of this living lab model, that the city is a playground where there can be endless experiment and where things can't fail because nobody will be judged on their failure. These things take a lot of investment, as you said. Over 25 million euros went into the Triangulum project, 10 million into the other project. as well as there's been many other projects that have these kind of smart city themes, smart city demonstrators, and they tend to, as you say, they tend to be ephemeral in that there's a big kind of fanfare as they arrive. They tout the things that happen. You mentioned the talking bus stops, the idea that this is a new way to play within your environment, to interact, and actually, as soon as the funding goes, they disappear as if they never existed. So where do you feel that this kind of push comes from?
Thanks so much, Julian. Do you mean the push to experiment or the push to critique the experiment?
The push to experiment, the push to experiment, and the push to that technology can be the only solution.
Well, I would, within the short time frame, I would say part of the push is the digital economy, basically, because let's be very honest, we can have our beliefs and our thoughts. So I'm kind of culture and economy, right, as two driving forces. So there is a certain tradition of technological solutionism and believe that technology is there to improve things, which is very much driving the progress. And I'm not dismissing it at all. But what is also behind is immensely powerful digital economy, because every single project has industry partners who are also investors. And therefore, what I kind of note in the book is that all these innovations, even if they present themselves as environmentally helpful, they're driven by technological innovation, whether it's just an excitement of an experiment or just a need. It all sometimes almost felt like, yay, let's develop this new toy, and here is the money, and come up with the rationale in the aftermath. Now, the money, we can say, the funding, European research funding was big, but the money that's rolling the digital economy is unimaginably bigger. And therefore is really hard to combat because of that, and I find this in kind of the difficult to see critical voices against digital solutionism, because the idea of digital good or digital technology for good, and most recently AI for good, is driven precisely by the economy. But just kind of also very briefly, something that you mentioned, and especially in the context of Helsinki with the experiment, which cannot fail because it's just an experiment. Actually, what Lushin writes about is how the experiment is explicitly designed to fail. The whole point of the experiment is to fail and trial over and over again. And exactly like you said, Julian, because these smart city projects are set as experiments, there's almost no expectation of accountability, because we tried, and we left. And if anyone is working on this topic here in the audience or is particularly interested, obviously there is a much longer and quiet, I find it even, sad and difficult to reread what I wrote a year and a half ago, in kind of reflecting on what's left after these projects were gone. Never mind, there are no talkative bus stops. In Manchester, we don't even have digital displays on any single bus stop showing when the next bus is coming. So where are these talkative? And there was a piece where I was writing about how I'm cycling through Manchester and falling into every single pothole, of which Manchester is full, and keep waiting for this smart cycling, clean air that's nowhere to be seen, or talkative bus stops are nowhere to be seen. But individual vignettes aside, we have something much broader, because this idea of a city as a living lab for experiments is not only driving the tech and excluding the environment, it's also socially harmful, because it prioritizes certain communities and exclude others. So Manchester, for example, is all done in the Oxford Road corridor as a test bed, from which things will be expanded and kind of developed into something broader. But if you take as your test bed the area with university students, Manchester Central Hospitals, and the Science Park, and you expect this to just be expanded onto every other community in Manchester, it tells you who is your test subject, right? Who is your model onto whom you think your digital future and your digital city is going to be based on, and it isn't. So another thing that I would love to see is, how would a smart city look like if we took Moorside or Hume as our mode from which we want to expand? If we took the countryside, if we took the river, if we took the park, if we took the disenfranchised community, rather than Oxford Road, which is the shiniest, the widest road, the best cycle lane in town, and the shiniest part of the city, which is where this test bed for experiment takes place. So yeah, thank you so much for this. Lucy.
Can I ask a little question as well, Addy? I just wonder, building on Julian's question, like, do you see any kind of glimmers of hope in the development of smart cities? Or has there even been a decline in the use of that word recently? Like, has it still got currency? Definitely, techno-solutionism, we know that's got a huge amount of currency. But whether you're, generally that word's not used though to describe what's happening, but you'll know it's happening. But yeah, with the smart city concept, where is it at right now? Do you have a sense of that and where it might go?
I do a little bit. One of the interesting things that happened when I reviewed the two previous projects, I then went to look at where Manchester is now, and Manchester City Council has a digital strategy, which actually says we're moving away from just smart cities on their own into technology and kind of digital futures more broadly. I still find the same problems as I found previously, but I wonder kind of if we move from smart cities, what's next? My fear is that AI and automating everything is next. And this is a whole other 5-hour-long seminar of where this goes. But in terms of what gives me hope, so initiatives like Open Data Manchester, which was always and I've been following them and, really excited about them for years and talking to Julian for years, really committed to this stuff needs to serve the community and people. And it's not, data is bad, let's throw data away. Data needs to serve the people, not people serve the data, right? So I'm equally really loving the nature on the board because thinking about the future and developing technology need to be in service of the nature, not the other way around. So where I see a lot of these initiatives is actually bottom up. So a lot of the community driven or community serving initiatives is where these things happen. I suggest we pause here, and we've got about 9 minutes left to have Q&A for everyone, for all three of our books. If anyone in the audience maybe wants to ask us questions, the three of us or two of us, or just kind of shoot a bunch of questions at everyone present here as your opportunity. And I want to thank everyone, all the respondents and all the authors. This is beyond exciting and beyond treasurable to see the kind of work that we're all doing. So we've got time for questions. Either raise your hand or put them in the chat. But one question in the chat about a number of common themes across the books: altruism and accountability. We work in political structures where data insights might be inconvenient. We're already at the point where organizations cannot use the data they already have because data overload, absolutely, and proliferation of different perspectives. I'm very interested in what constitutes actionable insight for the wider population. Nature's board member is appealing. So I wonder whether maybe Geoff and Geoff's team and then Elisa and then myself, if we have time, can respond to that of what kind of, where are we going? What's an actionable insight?
What would be great in the NHS, in NHS England, in terms of the systems that they use, if there was one single point of truth where everything was brought together, and I think that's what Sue and their team are getting at with learning health systems, is bringing things together and mobilizing knowledge, because it takes so long for evidence, new discoveries to get from there to practice. I believe it takes about 17 years, is that right, Sue?
15 to 17 years, and that's only for about 50% of that to be implemented.
So that there's a kind of sustainability around just having a system that makes all knowledge available to all people all the time. So the proliferation of systems is a real problem in itself, and also plays against sustainability as well, because that generates more demand on the system as well.
And to try to add to that in a without being politically correct as I say it, there is a failure of people across the health informaticists family, actually the kind of people on this call, to work well together and to respect the different types of evidence and data that they bring to the party. If you think about this type of group and then the type of group that are working on communications and engagement and trust and marketing with patients, speaking from a health sector. You know, all these people need to come together to support the revision, the planning of better health services, whether that's in Manchester or Chester or anywhere else. You need insights from all these people, evidence, data, staff know-how, patient perspective, patient experience, and a learning health system which, you know, allows different systems to pour in to feed around a learning cycle, then needs to take account of the ability of humans to learn and what kind of learning tools are helpful for them, and what kind of learning programs are helpful. So you need your educators at the table as well. It's very rare to see all those people coming together to really look at solving problems.
Elisa, do you have any insights?
We do it. We do it. I think Louise Gosson is on this call, who's now Chief Knowledge Officer for the NHS across England. Louise will be bringing people together, you know, in bi-monthly round tables, precisely to be able to get a collective, coherent view on problem solving certainly around knowledge solutions.
Thank you so much, Sue. Elisa, do you have anything from your side of visual cultures?
Well, just one point related to something that Lucy said during reflection. So basically, in relation to your book and what Lucy said, we were talking about, you know, repairing, reusing, responsible use of the technology in the future. And I find like I don't know, like it's a very complicated conversation, because at the same time there is this emphasis on we should use more technology to move forward, as you know, part of the presentation that Geoff and his team did was AI and robots will be used. There will be an enormous number of robots supporting our staff and everything. But at the same time, there is that perspective where we should think about the environment and nature first. And my perspective is a little bit in the middle, because as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, through that documentary and through various practitioners that I interviewed, there is this perspective of using technology to witness and to understand climate change. So that there is this ability of using technology from various perspectives, sensors, visual perspectives, the ability to capture data with the new technologies that we weren't able to capture before, to understand what's going on. So an example was the avalanche, but there was also another example of drones being able to capture the way icebergs are melting in Antarctica in ways that we weren't able to document in the past. And all of this kind of documenting is capturing the data that tell us, guys, this is what is going on, and this is why we should reflect on climate change and the environment. But they do that through a heavy use of technology. So you see what I mean? Like there is this conflict of viewpoints. So I don't have an answer. My intervention now is purely to reflect on the dichotomy of the conversation.
Thank you so much. I think we're exactly on time. And just to kind of to wrap it up by saying that there is so much more to say. And even if those of you had the chance to read the comments, you can see that the conversation is so much bigger than what we can possibly achieve. So I would like to extend my thanks to every single one of you for being here. And I put a note in the chat for those of you who are external to MMU and are not already connected to either Geoff or Lisa or myself. If you would like to attend more of our events in the future, our website is still under construction. So just drop me an email and I'll add you to the mailing list. And we hope to see you here in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Addy. Thank you for your expert sharing.
Thank you very much as well.